Hello my disciples, I'm Dark the Damned, and today we're going to be watching one of my favourite YouTubers of all time. If I had like a top 15 or a top 20 favourite YouTubers of all time, this guy would be on it. Say hello to Bright Sun Films. Genuinely one of the best kind of YouTubers I've seen. I love all the format styles of his videos and I've watched loads of them many times. Except for this one. I've watched the original version of this video, but this is a brand new updated version. But what is this video? It is going to be on Nara Dreamland. Now this was actually a rip-off of one of Disney's parks. I think made in a different country. I think somewhere in Asia, but I could very well be wrong. It's been a while since I watched the original video. However, I'm excited to see the new updates that happened since that first video went up about Nara Dreamland. Does the park even still exist? Probably not. But let's go and find out full screen this. I hope you guys enjoy. Be sure to subscribe as well because I'm getting close to 3,000 subs and I really want to hit that goal. Let's get started.
Beginning of the 1960s, a weird theme park once stood as a near exact replica of Disneyland in California. But if you look a little bit closer, this Japanese park was...
Ah, yes, it was Japanese. I knew it was somewhere Asian in origin, but I didn't know exactly where it was for sure. But yeah, that's the main thing Nara Dreamland is known for. It is eerily similar to Disney, and I'm sure he will show some photos to compare the two.
It wasn't exactly an exact replica. In fact, everything in this bootleg park was all a little off. It was called Nara Dreamland, and for decades, it was perhaps the strangest theme park on the planet.
I mean, take a look at this and take a look at Disneyland in California, as you just said. You can see the eerie similarities between the two, and you can kind of see why this park became infamous for just stealing way too much of Disney's original design.
What's up, guys? My name is Jake, and in this 101st episode of Abandoned...
I can't believe this series has had over 100 episodes. I can remember when this series was still relatively new, and I've been keeping up with it ever since. But dang, 101. Congratulations, Jake. Very glad you hit it.
Let's take another updated look at the story behind one of the most infamous theme parks to have ever existed. One that once entertained millions as Japan's weird, unofficial Disneyland. A park that, over time, would only become more strange and unsettling. To the point, in fact, where it was left completely abandoned.
Yeah, and last time I checked up on this, it was still completely abandoned. I don't know if it's since been demolished, but yeah. I'm not sure how long it had been abandoned for, but yeah, it was left to rot for quite a while. Bright Sun Films. Abandoned. Dun dun dun.
It all started with a man named Kunizao Matsuo, a Japanese industrialist and entertainment businessman. In the late 1950s, Matsuo would make a trip out to America, particularly California. Deeply interested in the entertainment industry, he would make a special trip out to the newly opened and much hyped Disneyland Park in Anaheim. Seeing the enormous success of the park in America, and knowing there was a growing interest of Western culture back in Japan, Matsuo had pictured something just like this.
Oh yeah, the old mascots for when Disneyland first opened. I'll give you guys a very quick history lesson. So when Walt Disney first opened the park in, I believe 1955, I believe was when Disneyland first opened, he had everything except for the mascot costumes. So before this, he actually had a group called the Ice-Capades. He collaborated with them to allow Disney characters like Donald, Mickey, and Minnie to go out and perform ice skating. However, because he didn't have any mascots at the time of Disneyland opening, he had to quickly go over to the Ice-Capades and ask them, hey, can we quickly borrow some of your costumes to use for the park until we can get something of our own? They said yes, and that's why you've seen this image and many others before of Mickey and Minnie with these giant, like, massive gashes on their face, you know, gaping holes. And there's a practical reason for it. It's to allow those ice skaters to see, you know, when they're performing. But actually going around the park and seeing Mickey and Minnie with, like, their faces slashed open, it's pretty freaking scary. And you can see why it was very quickly changed and altered throughout the years. But yeah, there's a little bit of history behind this infamous Mickey Mouse costume.
Being as successful back in Asia. Now, it's been widely reported that Matsuo had entered into an agreement with Walt Disney himself to bring the Disneyland park and IPs back to Japan. It's been quoted in many places and even written about in Japanese books, but the verification on these claims are a little sketchy. As the story goes, Disney either demanded too much in terms of licensing, or the agreement fell apart for other reasons.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it really went anywhere, so it's not confirmed or denied if there was like some kind of partnership involved here.
Regardless of the actual validity of these meetings and the supposed agreements, Matsuo was completely set on building his own Disneyland park in Japan. He would choose a site in the ancient city of Nara, just outside of Osaka and Kyoto, and around 400 kilometers south of Tokyo. Matsuo would form a new corporate entity called the Dreamland Company, and he would choose a site in Nara that was previously occupied by a former US Army base left over from World War II.
Obviously, despite him ripping off several ideas from Disney, you got to give the guy some credit for his determination, you know? He wanted to make a park, he wanted to make something entertaining for people to come and enjoy, and despite if there even was a partnership that happened, despite it falling through, if it did happen, he still kept at it. And, you know, that's very good in business. You gotta have persistence when it comes to things.
This new park was going to replicate much of what he had already seen in California, and in 1961, Nara Dreamland would open to the public. The 125-acre park was a near spitting image of Disneyland in California. It was not only advertised in TV commercials as the new Disneyland of Japan, but it was touted in the press as a $14 million construction project, $1 million more expensive than the original California park.
Oh, I actually didn't know that this costed more than the original Disneyland did to make.
Though, if you actually saw it in person, I don't think you would really be able to point that out. Dreamland was, in pretty much every single way, a very close replica to the California park. Pretty much every major attraction and icon of that original park would be found here, right down to the very design and layout, as
Yeah, it was, again, eerily similar to Disney. Like, if you get several photos of the side-by-sides for, like, Main Street, you know, some of the big attractions around at the time, you can't deny that they've clearly ripped off Disney.
Dreamland was a hub-and-spoke design, with each land surrounding a central main street and castle in the middle. Fantasyland, Adventureland, Tomorrowland, and unique to this park, Ancestorland would all contain the many attractions within.
Ancestorland's pretty cool. I like the history of stuff, so that's a cool idea. I'll give them that.
Again, all of these are basically copies of those found in California. For example, you'd be greeted with a train station when first walking in, complete with a train that circles the entire park. You'd also find vintage vehicles driving up and down Main Street, a much less detailed Matterhorn mountain with a bobsled attraction running through it, and a skyway gondola crisscrossing each side of the park. A submarine attraction would circle a lagoon in Tomorrowland.
Oh, I didn't know they had a submarine attraction there. I could even see the, I believe, the Japanese flag at the time.
Right below an actual monorail system. In Adventureland, you'd find the Jungle Cruise Ship. And while most of the attractions were renamed,
oh, I don't think that last one, let me go back a little, where was that? Yeah, I don't think this would fly in today's society, but, you know, different times, people, different times.
And while most of the attractions were renamed, some just weren't. Dreamland was in nearly every single way a bizarre imitation that never really got the level of theming right. But it was also one that certainly delivered on its own charm. With a cast of newly created characters to populate its own IP, the Japanese public loved the park. In many ways, this was a first for the entire country.
Oh, did they not really have a lot of these theme parks? Well, I guess not, you know, because Disneyland had just opened around the time, you know. I don't think many companies in the sort were thinking of building so many roller coasters and just a theme park in this way, so yeah. I still think despite Nara Dreamland ripping off of Disney so much, it was cool to have. Definitely cool for Japan to be able to experience what the West have experienced.
And quickly after opening, Dreamland was an enormous success, ultimately reaching 1.6 million visitors a year.
That's not bad. 1.6 million, that's actually quite good.
With such a tremendous opening, Kunizo Matsuo was already being called Japan's Walt Disney. And with apparently no legal or copyright issues coming from the American company, he was setting his sights on expansion, building another Dreamland theme park just outside of Tokyo. This one, however, looked a lot less like Disneyland.
Okay, you know what, that's fair enough if you want to go for a little bit more originality. I always appreciate more originality when it comes to things, so yeah, I'm glad that he was able to find his footings and make his own kind of more original thing.
Dreamland back in Nara would continue to evolve though. As the decades went on, less emphasis was put on theming, and new, generic amusement park attractions were installed. Some were very successful though, like the Corkscrew roller coaster, which was placed right next to the castle in the late 1970s.
Oh, that looks cool. That's something I would have liked to have ridden on. It kind of reminds me of a Corkscrew at Alton Towers, you know, sharing the same name, I guess. I would have liked to have had a go on this, but Corkscrew closed in 2008, if memory serves me right. I was only 4 at the time, so I never got to experience this kind of ride, you know, where you go through a double loop like that in a corkscrew pattern. It's a shame. I would have liked to have experienced it. But yeah, it looks pretty cool. I'm glad Japan got to experience it.
While new flat rides were introduced in the coming years, a water park element was also constructed.
Oh, I actually didn't know that there was a water park in Nara Dreamland. I'm not sure if Jake actually touched on this in the original video, but yeah, you know what? Nara Dreamland, I gotta give him that.
Replacing Ancestorland in the 1980s.
Fair enough.
These were decent attendance boosters and overall investments to the park, but it turned out to not nearly be enough to compete with what was coming.
Oh yeah, here we go. This is where the competition's gonna start.
Over in Tokyo, a real estate corporation called the Oriental Land Company was attempting to persuade the Walt Disney Company to license their IPs and allow them to build a real Disney theme park in Japan.
Yep, you can already see how this is gonna affect Nara. If they're gonna get the original version or, you know, the true Disneyland over in Japan, why would you visit the knockoff one? And unfortunately, this is kind of where Nara Dreamland was just destined to fail.
Disney was reportedly quite upset over the Nara Dreamland park and was hesitant to expand internationally.
I mean, can you blame them?
However, by 1979, a deal was reached, and in 1983, Tokyo Disneyland would open to the public.
Even though, you know, despite all the tension and stuff, Disney can't resist to make a buck. Anything to put more money in their pockets, they'll do. But I mean, I'm not going to diss them for it. You know, I believe that Japan should definitely get to experience the genuine, authentic Disneyland, you know. It's a shame there isn't actually one in the UK. I mean, there's one in Paris, which is the closest one, but I really wish we could have had a Disneyland here in the UK. Would have been cool.
An immediate and enormous success. While Nara Dreamland was seeing over 1.5 million people a year, Tokyo Disneyland was already welcoming their 10 millionth guest after just a year of being open.
Yeah, that's pretty fast, yeah. There's just really nothing you can do about it at this point.
This obviously affected Dreamland, and with dropping attendance, there was already a palpable decline in the condition of the park. Documented in 1990 by Kim Peterson, the park by this point was looking very tired and extremely empty during an October weekday.
And that's just the thing you have to realize when it comes to running a theme park or other things like that. You have to keep up with the times. You have to keep relevant. Because if you're just going to be stuck in the past, looking incredibly dated, when new competition eventually comes along, everybody will just forget about the old, outdated stuff and just go along with the new things at the time. So you always have to keep up with what's popular and what people are enjoying in the moment. Because if you just stay in the past, you're just going to fail. And I believe that's also what did Nara Dreamland in, alongside Disney opening a real park over in Japan.
Besides the sheer eeriness of a nearly empty park, even by this point, there were clear signs of wear and tear on almost everything. For example, gift shops looked disheveled and messy, while buildings were left unwashed and stained from weathering.
Ugh.
There was clearly not a high level of quality control that they were going for. This was while weeds were peeking through cracks in the
Oh, I mean, look at that. You can't have that in a theme park. It's not good at all.
pathways, and trash was left littering the grounds. The years weren't kind to the larger park icons, like the Matterhorn. Its little texture and flat sides, now stained by the years of humid summers and cold winters.
Yeah, that's just a shame, really, but it just happens if you don't take care of parks and stuff. Eventually, you know, nature's gonna come after it.
Its bootleg bobsled attraction within was looking even more shoddy, with its lift hill revealing the exposed steel structure, illuminated only by strung-up Christmas lights.
Jesus.
Clearly the park was struggling, and despite how dire the situation looked during this time, Dreamland would continue to stay above water. By this point, Kunizo Matsuo had long since passed away, and the company which owned Dreamland to this point had now been acquired. This new corporate owner would invest more into the park. Additional flat rides and a vintage car track were added through the 90s.
You see that ride that just happened there? I'll go back a little. This ride I would never go on. This scares the crap out of me. I don't know why, just the design of it, you know, swinging, then it flinging upside down. For me, that's just an absolute no-go. I would never go on any of those kind of rides.
And a vintage car track were added through the 90s. And even a wooden coaster called the Asuka was installed in 1998.
To be fair, Nara Dreamland's lasting quite a while. You know, it opened back in the 60s, and we're into the 90s, and sure, it's looking tired, and, you know, they're not doing as well as they used to, but they're still around for this time. You know, over 30 years, you got to give them some credit for that.
However, these additions made little difference to park attendance.
Yeah, just kind of delaying the inevitable at this point.
In 2001, Tokyo Disneyland Resort had expanded with yet another massive theme park, Disney Sea.
Oh, yeah, 2 of them now. Hasn't got long left, Nara Dreamland, unfortunately.
Arguably the most detailed park in their entire portfolio. This was all while Universal Studios Japan had
Oh, even Universal's jumping in on it too, yeah. They're cooked now.
opened the same year. Unlike Disney though, Universal had built their park in Osaka, just 22 kilometers away.
Oh, yeah, then the location, just more reason to avoid going to Nara when Universal's right there.
As a result, Dreamland once again took a huge attendance hit, and the park was now in a pretty rough state. By 2002, the facility had switched to a seasonal operating schedule, only open during weekends and holidays in the winter, as attendance was said to have dropped to 400,000 visitors. By
Wow, that's quite steep.
2005, the park was in serious trouble. Nara Dreamland was being run like a cheap amusement park by this point, in sheer contrast to the flashy new, ultra-detailed theme parks from Universal and Disney. The park was now turning into a creepy, low-effort mess.
I mean, look at that. The statue there, that's just not acceptable at all. Yeah, and just what happens, really. You know, if you don't look after a park so well, it's gonna go to the dogs in the end. It just doesn't keep up with the times, and that's what screwed over Nara Dreamland.
Operated on what looked like a shoestring budget, and staffed by a skeleton crew. With an immense lack of visitors, guests would walk through rusting queues
I mean, that's just terrifying to look at. I mean, look at this thing here. That is not appealing at all.
for rides, only to find there was no ride operator present. Mascots would walk around aimlessly amongst a rotting Sleeping Beauty castle with shingles falling off. Decaying corners of Main Street would have trash littering the street with service vehicles parked out in the open. Actually, all throughout the park, you would just find random service vehicles strewn about. It was all clearly on its last legs, and the very fact that this bootleg Disneyland even existed in Japan was really the only novelty it provided.
Yeah, I guess at this point, there's literally no reason to ever visit Nara Dreamland. You've got 2 Disney parks, you've got a Universal park, which is only like a bit of a distance away. This place is tired, it's dated, it's ripping off of Disney, it looks horrible, there's trash everywhere, you know. There's really no point of visiting Nara Dreamland at this point, so it's a wonder it lasted as long as it did, to be completely honest.
Remove the decaying castle, the poor imitation of the Matterhorn, and the painfully slow monorail, and all you have is a very sad theme park waiting to be shuttered. Indeed, the park was operating on borrowed time. Following a transferal of land ownership to a new real estate firm and continued low attendance, Nara Dreamland would close permanently on August 31st, 2006.
You see, again, that is a lot longer than I thought. So it opened, I believe, in 61, closed in 2006. So that's, yeah, that's over 40 years. A lot longer than I thought.
With the corporate owners of the park falling behind on their taxes and not all that interested in even redeveloping the site, especially given the cost to demolish everything, Dreamland was incredibly just left as it was. Already following its closure, weeds were already breaking through the cracks in the parking lot, and the entrance topiary was growing out of control. It wouldn't take long until people began to evade the lax security and found their way inside the park.
And this is my favorite part of this abandoned series, when you see the park or, you know, the shops or whatever he's talking about, and just seeing it in its rough state as it's left to rot for several years. And, you know, you see people eventually finding their way in and recording it all. It just looks like in a post-apocalyptic thing where things were just left as they were, like a nuke went off, everybody's gone, and things are just left to rot. I just find it so intriguing. And at the same time, quite scary, you know.
Over the next couple of years, explorers would document the quickly deteriorating Dreamland, which had gone from a relatively frozen state of 2006, with foliage growing out of control, to a complete apocalyptic wasteland by the 2010s. Through this time, little had actually been done inside the park.
Yeah, look at this.
So everything was basically left exactly as it was the day it closed. Creators like The Proper People and Exploring with Josh would show just how eerie and stuck in isolation this property really was.
I mean, look at all the trees and the grass and everything. I mean, this park is just done.
This knockoff Disneyland was now slowly rotting away, and evidence of people getting inside was becoming apparent. The main street was now overgrown by weeds and tall grass, while the buildings had boards over their broken windows
And graffiti is just bloody everywhere.
and graffiti covering some of the facade. The surreal sight of a clearly abandoned main street with a decaying, graffiti-covered Sleeping Beauty castle at the end is truly an insane sight. Over in Tomorrowland are the remnants of the monorail, now with smashed windows, a disheveled interior, and most of the body covered in graffiti.
Again, look at this. It's just so intriguing. I don't know why. I just find this so fascinating.
Elsewhere are the overgrown coasters like the Aska,
I mean, look at that. Just like entire portions of the thing is basically just grass at this point.
covered in thick vines, or the corkscrew, also overgrown by the foliage surrounding it. The Fantasy Coaster, a family-friendly attraction, had now been swallowed by the forest,
Oh my god.
its track and supports rusting away.
Like,
The
look at
Jungle
that.
Cruise was in a similar state, with its dock rotting away and the boats, all tied together,
Jesus.
now heavily decayed, some even slowly sinking. While many outdoor attractions were in very bad condition, in contrast, if you walked into a former restaurant or dark ride, you could tell they were a lot better preserved.
Yeah, this looks a little bit better. Obviously, you can tell it's been through some rough patches. You know, things are kind of fallen down. You know, things are on the floor. But yeah, nowhere near as bad as the outside. Not even close.
But still, the park as a whole was truly an incredible sight.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Something so surreal that it was hard to believe it was even a real place. But it wasn't looking like that was going to be the case for long.
Oh.
Throughout all of this time, interest in the land and redevelopment was low. Local land zoning
I mean, just look at this.
regulations and the existing challenges of the site made it difficult to sell. The owners had also fallen behind in taxes, and the city ultimately seized ownership of the park. They planned to bring it to auction and hopefully get something moving, ideally with someone coming in and demolishing it. So, by November of 2015, the site was brought to auction and only one company made a bid, that being SK Housing. They purchased the land for an equivalent of around $7 million US.
I see. I'm surprised they even got that much for it, or paid that much for it.
And that price was truly rock bottom. A local news outlet called the acquisition unparalleled for how cheap it traded for. SK Housing was generally a pretty small real estate company, only owning a few office buildings and had no experience with clean sheet development.
So why the hell would they purchase an abandoned, rotting, decaying theme park? I have no idea.
While their intentions for the site were unclear, they did ultimately agree to demolish the existing structures at the plea of local police and residents.
I mean, if it's just at this point where there's trees everywhere, it looks like basically none of this is salvageable. I mean, you just gotta put it out of its misery. You can't leave it standing like this, it's dangerous.
The park by this point was heavily vandalized and a constant nuisance for the community. Finally, after sitting abandoned for over 10 years, demolition had begun. This started with a clearing out of the interior structures, particularly those on Main Street, which had all of their contents thrown into separate piles along the main thoroughfare. Then the heavy machinery would come in,
Dang.
completely tearing away those Main Street buildings. By mid-2017, all of the structures on the site had been demolished.
That was pretty quick, honestly, getting rid of all of that in just, like around 2 years or so. Dang.
But any future development on the former park was still hindered by the strict land zoning. And at the time of writing this, while developers are currently working on a plan to introduce a special zoning allowance for the site, nothing has been approved yet. Meanwhile, a portion of the now flattened land was being reused, specifically for a small parking lot and a baseball field, one that now, at least partially, occupies the former site of the monorail and vintage cars.
Oh, I see.
However, while some parts of the property have been returned back to the community, at least temporarily, other parts still remain abandoned, a clear reminder of the past. The former Esplanade entrance, for example, all of the original concrete remains in place, and from the main road, you can even still see the archways guests would walk through to enter the park.
Now that's
Likewise,
creepy.
surrounding
I
the
like
entire
that.
property are the same fences, some still displaying the former name on the mailbox. Even the stairs up to the Main Street train station still remain in place, a ghostly reminder of an equally ghostly theme park.
That's horrifying. You know, despite pretty much nearly everything still being demolished, there are still some things that remain of what once was.
When you look back at it all, it is truly astonishing that something like this existed.
And for how long it existed as well, going well over 40 years.
It's certainly a relic of its time, and something that would never get built now in our modern era of copyright and IP law.
Oh, absolutely not. The second anybody would try to do this, Disney would be immediately on their ass. So yeah, just something that will never be seen again, in my opinion.
At least not at this scale. The fact that Kunizo Matsuo traveled to America, admired what the Disney company had built, then came home and in just a few short years built his own bootleg version of Disneyland, it's just truly insane.
It is insane, and again, you could argue, morality about him ripping off Disney, but you have to give him credit for persistence. He had an idea and he wanted to go for it, and he did it. Sure, it ended up abandoned in decayed in '06, but, for those, first couple decades, he really did something. He really entertained Japan and gave them somewhere nice to go. So, despite it not working out in the end, good for him for taking that shot. I just wish he could have done it a little bit more originally.
And while this park was a pretty shoddy, sort of half-assed attempt to replicate the aspects that made the real Disneyland special,
Yeah,
Nara
true.
Dreamland, no matter where the idea came from, was objectively revolutionary for Japan. It was something
Oh yeah, you can't deny, again, the size of it, everything, the fact that you did it in only a couple years after just seeing it once or twice, is great.
the Japanese had never seen before and brought themed entertainment to the country, paving the way for a surge in entertainment enterprises all across the nation. But as time went on, and as other larger and more legitimate parks opened up, the novelty and uniqueness of Dreamland began to wear off.
I'd argue that Dreamland is now more remembered for just how much of an abandoned wreck state it was, what ripped off Disney and now is laying in ruins. I believe that, sadly, is what Nara Dreamland is going to be remembered for most of the world. Even though I imagine a lot of older people in Japan will remember it for, the good years when the park was actually great and they didn't have all of this competition. No, I believe Nara Dreamland will forever go down in history now as just an abandoned, decaying rip-off theme park of Disney.
The public increasingly began to view the park as a cheap, uninspired, unauthentic, and illegitimate operation. By every passing year, Dreamland only got less impressive and more of a mess. It became a relic of a time now long passed by, and with a depressed Japanese economy and new corporate owners, it was only a matter of time before this bizarre, truly surreal knockoff Disney theme park was left completely abandoned.
Yeah, Nara Dreamland was always on borrowed time. It was never gonna last. But again, I'm surprised it made it over 4 decades. And there we go. That was the abandoned Nara Dreamland video by not Blame It On George, why am I saying him? By Bright Sun Films. They both start with B, that's why. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction. I really enjoy all of Bright Sun Films videos. His other series, Bankrupt, Cancelled 2. I find them all just to be so enjoyable and so relaxing as well. So if you guys want to see me do more videos watching some of Bright Sun Films videos, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to become one of my disciples, and let me know what you want to see. And don't worry, Deep Dive into VTubers will definitely be continuing. I just need a little bit of a break from it, because I did bang out 3 episodes very quickly. But I hope you all enjoyed, and for now, I'm Doc the Damned, and I will see you all later. Take care, my disciples.